So yes, it was 2012. I was 47 at the time. And I was at the top of my game in terms of as a filmmaker. I had just come out of my marriage had broken down 8 months previously, and was coping incredibly well. My husband had moved out. I was looking after our children who are age 11 and 12. I was juggling that with making films, traveling around the world, and and life was kind of great. Life was, despite the fact that we'd had this difficult situation with the marriage breaking down, life was pretty good. What wasn't so good was that I had assumed that I would be keeping the marital home. I think that's probably what had been discussed at the time. And so when when my ex said, actually, that's not going to happen, we're going to sell it so that we can both have, a reasonable home for the kids, I just went into a total spin. Because I'd told the children that we wouldn't be moving out of this lovely neighborhood and this lovely home. So it was their loss. It was my loss. And I couldn't envisage a future somehow. I'd cope with everything by having a certain future in my head, which involved me living in this rather lovely big house with the two children. So it was kind of like, it just didn't add up in my head at all. And anyway, I couldn't sleep. I had some Zopiclone sleeping tablets for jet lag. I started taking those, and then I was just like, Christ, what am I going to do when these run out? This was after a few days, because I hadn't kind of like dealt with the situation. So they were not, I mean, I'm somebody who, as I discovered later, I'm somebody who doesn't react very well to any kind of medication. I think possibly the Zopiclone had made me slightly wobbly. But anyway, I went to the doctors to try and get more sleeping tablets. The doctor said no, or maybe gave me one or whatever. And I refused to accept that. We had private insurance. And so I went to a private psychiatrist. I said, I can't sleep. And can you give me something to sleep? And he said, well, I can't give you sleeping tablets. They're highly addictive, but you're depressed. You're obviously depressed. So I'm going to give you an antidepressant. And I remember thinking, this is very odd, because I wasn't depressed last week before I'd heard the news about selling the house. I was completely fine. But at the time I just thought, well, anyway, it doesn't really matter. He's giving me something that's going to help me to sleep. What do I care? So he gave me escitalopram, and I took it. I immediately had akathisia, which your listeners will know is an uncontrollable desire to keep moving. I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, I literally didn't sleep and was in a terrible, terrible state. And after 2 days of that, I went into a complete toxic delirium and this was actually, so it was only after 3 doses of this pill. And
Wow.
that was the most terrifying thing. I mean, I literally was hallucinating. I thought I had killed the children. I took a kitchen knife, and I stabbed myself and thought I'd stab the children. Again, this was partly, looking back, I remember in this delirium, this kind of feeling of akathisia as well. So it was all mixed up with hallucinations and so on and so forth. But certainly the uncontrollable desire to kind of harm myself and to stab myself with that knife would have been a kind of akathisia reaction. So my children, obviously, they were only aged 11 and 12 at the time. They called my ex. He came along, and my sister. They realized I was very ill. I was taken to a private hospital because of the insurance. I was delusional. They kept me in for a night. The next day, I was still delusional. I thought there were cameras in the ceiling. I wouldn't put the TV on and when people said, why not? I said, well, because there's going to be news footage of me because I've killed the children. So when they interviewed me, they were kind of like, she's completely crazy. She's got, psychotic depression, I think is what they thought. So
Mhm.
the day after, because of course now I hadn't taken any more of the medication, the next day I woke up in the hospital and I was completely fine. And I was shocked. I didn't know what had happened. I hadn't really connected the dots to know that it was the escitalopram that had caused this. Um, at the time, I thought, somebody must have put acid in my drink or something. I just couldn't understand it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and before you took that, did you have any hesitations about what would happen, or have any expectations? Like when he first prescribed it, you were just like, "Oh, I'll take this to help me sleep, and it'll be fine."
yeah. I was naive. I was kind of desperate because I just wanted to sleep because had gone into this kind of catastrophizing of, oh God, if I can't sleep, I'm going to lose my job. If I lose my job, I won't be able to support the children. If I can't support the children, I won't, my ex will have custody. At that sort of, that spiraling that now I would have tools that would stop me from doing that. Back then, you know, I didn't realize you don't have to jump onto every thought. Just because you think something, it's not true. You can kind of park that and you can have different thoughts. But at the time, it just seemed to be an inescapable spiral of thoughts that I was having, and a total overreaction to selling a house, basically, which is what it was. I mean, it was difficult, but it wasn't the end of the world. So anyway, so there I was at this.
Hmm.
I wake up, I'm completely fine. I ask if I can go home. They say absolutely not, and it would have all been fine, Ivan. It would have all been fine if they'd just said, "Okay, drink some water, stay here, do a bit of therapy, eat well, get better." Would have all been fine, but that isn't what happened. Of course, what they did is they said, right, you need antidepressants and antipsychotics. So, um,
It's
what
all just procedural. Yeah.
it's all procedural, and of course, if you react
Hmm.
badly to one, you're going to probably react badly to all of them. These pills that act on the serotonin system, they're much of a muchness. If you have a kind of reaction to citalopram, you're going to have a reaction to Prozac, you're going to have a reaction to sertraline.
Hmm. And you mentioned a little bit earlier on that I think before you said you had a some kind of genetic testing done. Of course, this is later on after the fact,
Much
and
later on,
you
yeah.
found out that you were a low metabolizer. Which, of course, at that time, if you would have no idea about that, then there's no idea what to expect. As in terms of reactions and whatnot. So.
No, but also, I mean, it would have been extraordinary to me to think that a prescribed drug could have quite such a
Mhm.
huge impact. It would have been, it's the only reason it's believable to me now is because I've experienced it. If anybody had have told me that at the time, I would have just said no. I just would not. I would not have been able to believe it. But anyway, so there I was in the private hospital. Immediately, I started having akathisia again. I didn't go into a delirium, but that is what I had. And nobody recognized it. But I remember the agony of just not being, I was just walking round and round in circles. I was going up and down the corridor. I couldn't sit still in the therapy sessions, which of course they were like, oh, she's worse. She's really anxious, because I couldn't sit down. And so the work that you're doing is so important, because I was in a top London hospital as a resident inpatient with unbelievably obvious, textbook akathisia. Absolutely nobody recognized it. They just put it down to anxiety.